Hello everybody and welcome to this video. I'm Jorge Caballero, touring guitarist and professor of guitar at Rutgers University. So this video has three main topics. Number one, we're going to talk about thumb technique. Very, very important. Most people don't realize how important it is, but very, very important. The second topic is repertoire. And today we're going to focus on not a full piece or not an etude either. We're going to focus on a big piece, but only a fragment of it. Rodrigo's Concierto de Aranjuez, second movement. And also we're going to talk about some interpretation, interpretive options. And just so you get an idea as to how a performing guitarist would actually arrive at interpretation. So I'm going to provide some examples. But let's get started. The first aspect, I'm going to play the excerpt or part of it, just so you can have a sense of this. Now, this piece is very famous, Concierto de Aranjuez, second movement, probably the most famous guitar piece that we have. Aside from Asturias, we have this. So the passage in question is typically, it's called a recitativo, in that it's a recitativo styles section. The guitar plays by itself, and it occurs right before the cadenza. There's a few scales that you play after that, and then you play the cadenza. And it begins like this. Orchestra finishes playing, you have something that sounds like this in the orchestra. And then here. And then the guitar plays just by itself. And then you have this. That's only one portion of it, but I want you to just become familiar with the passage, and now we can talk about it. By the way, if you need the music is easily accessible for this. I can't actually offer it online because it's copyrighted, so you would actually have to purchase it, but it's easy enough to find this music. So in any case, this is a great passage for several reasons. First of all, it's something that I'm sure that if you've studied guitar before, you're interested in learning. But oftentimes when we realize that it's a concerto and it's a very famous piece and it has the reputation of being one of the most difficult pieces in the repertoire, we tend to shy away from playing it. However, I would always recommend that if you find a passage in a piece that you consider that could be useful to you, just study that passage. You never have the responsibility to play a full piece, a 30-minute long piece, or a 20-minute long piece like this concerto. Well, unless you actually have to do it. But otherwise, you don't have to. You can just look at passages that you enjoy, and you can get a lot of benefit from just studying them. And this one, the one in question, has a lot of different things that you can look at. But the first focus is, since I wanted to talk about thumb technique, this passage is really fascinating because it can be played in a few different ways. And the main way, and this is one of the ways in which I work with students on it, and I recommend it for students, is that it really helps you improve your understanding of thumb technique, particularly when it comes to how to play melodies and how to roll chords. And those are the two things that I wanted to talk to you about. So the first thing is, obviously, you can play all of the melody here using your thumb, because pretty much all of the passage is on bass strings. And so as such, you have this, and then, so all of that can just be played thumb. And then rolling chords is also a function that comes from the thumb as well. So you have this, then you have this, and here. So if you if all you know about thumb technique is just that, you already have the necessary tools to be able to more or less play this passage. You can just practice it, go here, and then roll a chord. You see how that works? Okay, so that's the initial step, and literally you can just focus on this and practice it, and you'll get some really nice results. But if we look at it a bit more deeply, now we can get more creative. And the first thing is we have to find a way to get a good sounding and strong sounding melody that separates itself from the chords themselves. So for example, if you play like this, there is separation between the melody and the accompaniment, but it's not as strong. So learning to separate means that you have to learn to attack the string from different points from your thumb and in different ways. So here, to get a different quality of sound, I'm going to aim for sort of more of the lateral side of my nail here. And also I'm going to push down, even though I'm not really playing a rest stroke, but I'm playing like that. And then to play this chord, I'm going to aim for sort of the center of the nail, and I'm going to roll just in a very relaxed and slow manner, like that. So now I have, and now I have this. Also the difference of where I'm playing. So for example, my melodies are pretty much always in this general region of the string, and the chords that I'm playing are either here or here, depending on situation, you know, how the strings are resonating. So that's a secondary level of how you can actually play and make something better out of this passage. And so as such, so now, that's the second level. Now, here's another level. And in this level, we're going to talk about how to learn a few more things about how much more you can actually do with your thumb. Let's first talk about the thumb melody notes. And there are a couple of ways in which we typically do this. And, you know, both are possible, both are fine. And I would recommend that if you are comfortable with one of them to explore the other option. But usually when we're playing thumb bass notes, we are typically taught to hold our fingers on different strings with the thought that you're going to play a chord or something like that. So if you were to play a chord, your fingers would be ready to play. So something like this, and then after that, you can actually use your thumb. So say, and then, so notice how my fingers are always arriving on strings to make sure that my fingers are ready to play. So that's one of the ways in which we use our thumb. But the other way to do it is by taking all of that away completely and closing the hand. And that actually has some nice options. What it does is that it gives a little bit more strength to the thumb itself, and it also gives it a little bit more mobility. So doing this like this, as opposed to, the difference is actually somewhat minimal, but it really becomes more apparent the more you have to do. Like say later in the passage you have to do this. So that's obviously faster. So if you go, having your fingers down actually slows down your thumb, whereas keeping your fingers closed or tucked, it's much easier to flow with the notes. So that's another thing that you can actually consider practicing. So, you know, try playing this, tuck your fingers in, and then aim for the same angle and see if you can be consistent with your notes. So that's another thing that you can actually do with this. The other thing that you can do is regarding the chords themselves, the thumb alone can provide at least 3 different modes of execution with regards to rolling chords. The first one is the one I was using when you use your nail, and you have this, for example. The second one is when you don't use your nail, and for that, tucking your fingers is also useful, say here. You can also do that, by the way, with your hand open, which is a bit softer, so you should really become familiar with both. And then there's a third option that is not common for classical guitarists, but it's actually common for some popular guitarists, especially with flamenco style. So, and it's a very, very unique stroke. So I'm going to first play it. It sounds like that. It has all of this nail bite into it. And I can just quickly tell you that the way it works is by placing your thumb almost facing upward. And what happens is that as you drop down, your nail first clicks on the string, like that, and then the rest of the nail drops onto the string. And then hear the click. And of course, if you do that quickly, you get that sort of a sound. It's rather strange at first if you're not used to hearing it, but I can tell you it's actually a very effective sound if you figure places where it could be very useful as a color, as an interesting color. And I can also tell you that I do recall Segovia actually using it. There is a recording of something where he's actually using that sound. What I do not remember is where, but so I'll find out, and when I find out, I'll bring this up again in another video. So those are 3 options of rolling chords, and now different ways of playing melodies with your thumb using the same passage. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just be creative and try to use my imagination, and I'm going to play the same passage from the Rodrigo concerto. And I'm going to play and roll the chords in different ways. I'm going to play my thumb in the 2 different ways that I just showed you, keeping my fingers resting on strings, or with my thumb tucked. So you can hear all of these differences. Now, what I'm going to do does not in any way really constitute a proper interpretation of the piece. Instead, it's more, think of it as an exercise in learning how to control your options and how to make decisions regarding sound that then eventually you evaluate and determine whether they're actually ultimately valid or something that you actually want to hear when you're thinking about performing the piece, or just for your own sake, whether the sound that you're producing is actually something that you enjoy. So for example, starting again, I'm going to start here, and I'm going to play this chord. Now I'm going to tuck my fingers. I'm going to use this sound here, and now tucked, the standard sound. Now here. Back, and now here. And now flesh. Standard again. Now here. And this one here. And here. And now here. Okay. So that, by the way, is the entire passage. After that, the orchestra comes back and they're playing something like this. Oh, guitar begins again. But in any case, this is just to show you how you can take a passage and use it as a way to improve your thumb. And there were several levels. The first one was learning how to play, just use your thumb and use it for the basic necessity of playing a melody and then a chord. And then the second level was how to make the thumb stronger for the melody and how to roll the chords separately. And then the final level that I talked about was two ways in which you can actually position your thumb. One gives you better mobility, that's the one that tucks the fingers. And then the other one where you actually set your fingers down on strings as if you were going to play a chord for stability. And each one had slightly different properties. And then finally, there was also the issue of how to create different qualities of sound. So this one, or otherwise that one as well, and this. And so we had all these options. I should just recap this one as well, here or here. And I mentioned that this gives you more mobility. So, and then as you can see, I just played the passage and I just tried different possibilities of sound with it. You know, the melody since the melody is just a melody itself, that had to be consistent every time. But the chords themselves were the ones that allowed me the greatest creativity because I could use different options. And so, in any case, that's the passage. Thinking back on how I just played it, I probably would make some changes to the chords, what kind of sound I used for some of the chords that I played. For example, after this, after this here, I probably would use the standard. I use this. But the reason I would use the standard is because I want this one for that chord, see? So I think all of this, like I said, is not a direct indicative of how I would actually perform this, but these are really good ways for me, for example, to just train my thumb and to learn how to make different sounds and to position my hand differently and to constantly be thinking about different ways of creating more interesting ways of sound, creating more interesting sound worlds for listeners. So, in any case, I hope this was useful. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comment section below. And thanks for watching once again, and I'll see you in the next one.